Marcus Chen sat in the back of a Tesla Model S, scrolling through quarterly reports showing another record-breaking year for his AI software company. 800 million in revenue, stock up 340%. He should have felt on top of the world. Instead, he felt nothing. His therapist had asked him a question last week that he couldn't shake. When's the last time you connected with someone who wasn't trying to get something from you? Marcus couldn't answer. Everyone in his circle was either pitching him, networking with him, or working for him. Every conversation felt transactional, calculated, empty. That's when he got the idea. A ridiculous idea that his assistant said was absolutely insane, and his lawyer said opened him up to unnecessary liability. He was going to drive for Uber, not as Marcus Chen, the billionaire tech founder featured in Forbes, as Marcus Lee, a regular guy trying to make ends meet in San Francisco's brutal gig economy. He wanted to understand how the other half lived, the people affected by algorithms and profit margins he approved in boardroom meetings. He told himself it was about gaining perspective. Really? He was searching for something real in a life that had become completely artificial. Marcus bought a used 2019 Toyota Camry for cash from a dealer in Oakland. He wore a plain hoodie and jeans instead of his usual Tom Ford suits. He created a new driver account under his mother's maiden name. The first few days were eye-opening in ways he didn't expect. He picked up a marketing executive who spent the entire 15-minute ride screaming into his phone about synergistic deliverables. Marcus wanted to tell him how meaningless that jargon was. He'd used the same words 1,000 times. He drove a college student to her restaurant job who apologized 3 times for only tipping $2. She had no idea that the CEO of the company whose software powered her campus Wi-Fi was driving her to her minimum wage shift. He took a father of 2 to his second job at a warehouse, who fell asleep the moment he got in the car. The man's work badge said his shift started at p.m. It was his second job because one income wasn't enough anymore. Each ride chipped away at the comfortable narrative Marcus had built. That people were poor because they were lazy. That the system worked if you just worked hard enough. That his wealth was purely about merit. But nothing prepared him for the ride that would change everything. It was 1:47 a.m. on a Thursday when the request came through. Pick up at San Francisco General Hospital. Drop off in the outer Sunset District. Marcus pulled up to the employee entrance and saw her immediately. Sarah Mitchell looked completely exhausted. Her scrubs were wrinkled. Her dark hair was falling out of its ponytail, and she was carrying a worn canvas bag that had definitely seen better days. She practically fell into the back seat. Long shift? Marcus asked as he pulled away from the curb. 18 hours, she said, her voice hoarse. We were short-staffed, again. 3 nurses called out, and the ICU was completely full. A bus accident came in around hour 14, and she trailed off, staring out the window. Sorry. I'm rambling. I'm just really tired. Don't apologize, Marcus said. That sounds brutal. Sarah let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. It's healthcare in America. We're all barely hanging on. They drove in silence for a moment. Then Sarah spoke again, quieter this time. Can I ask you something? How long have you been driving for Uber? Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. Few months. Why? Just wondering if you're doing this full-time or if it's a second job. Most drivers I meet are working multiple gigs just to survive. Second job, Marcus lied, staying in character. You? Nursing is my only job, but between my student loans and rent, I picked up extra shifts. My landlord just raised my rent another $300. In this city, even with a decent salary, you're one emergency away from being broke. Marcus felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. His company had just leased an entire floor in a building in Soma. The annual rent was more than most people made in a decade. He'd approved it without a second thought. What made you become a nurse? He asked. Sarah was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she said, my little brother had leukemia when he was 7. The nurses at the children's hospital were the only people who made that nightmare bearable. They saw us, really saw us, you know. When you're that scared, having someone treat you like a human being and not just a case number, it matters. Did he make it? Marcus asked softly. Yeah. He's 23 now, getting his master's in social work. Sarah smiled. And for the first time, Marcus saw past the exhaustion. He wants to help people too. I guess our family has a type. Marcus pulled up to her apartment building, a run-down complex that had probably been built in the 70s. The paint was peeling. One of the security lights was out. Sarah gathered her bag and pulled out her phone to close out the ride. Thank you for listening. Most people just want to ride in silence, which is fine, but it was nice to talk to someone. Marcus watched as she added a tip. $7 on a $14 fare. You don't have to tip, he heard himself say. Really? Sarah looked up, surprised. Of course I do. You're working just as hard as I am. We've got to look out for each other, right? The people at the top sure aren't looking out for us. She had no idea she was talking to one of those people at the top. She got out of the car with a tired wave, and Marcus sat there in the dark, staring at the $7 tip notification on his phone. She'd just worked an 18-hour shift saving lives. She was drowning in debt, barely affording rent, and she tipped him $7 because she thought he needed it. When was the last time Marcus had thought about what someone else needed? Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. He went back to his penthouse that overlooked the bay, looked around at the furniture that cost more than a year of her rent, and felt sick. He had his assistant pull Sarah's information from the ride. Sarah Mitchell, 32, a nurse at San Francisco General. It took his team exactly 40 minutes to compile a complete profile. Student loan debt, $127,000. Rent, $2,400 for a one-bedroom. Car payments, credit card debt from an emergency room visit she'd had 3 years ago, when she didn't have proper insurance between jobs. A nurse who couldn't afford health care. The irony was devastating. Marcus made a decision. He started small. He contacted her landlord's property management company anonymously and paid her rent for the next 2 years in advance. He set it up as a housing lottery the building was running. He paid off her student loans through a fake nonprofit called the Healthcare Workers Relief Fund. He sent her a letter saying she'd been selected for a grant based on her years of service. But he didn't stop there. He started actually researching the problems Sarah had mentioned. Nurse shortages, healthcare worker burnout, the crisis of medical debt for medical professionals themselves, the affordable housing crisis. For the first time in years, Marcus felt awake, like he'd been sleepwalking through his own life, and suddenly someone had splashed cold water on his face. He started redirecting his company's charitable giving. He established a real housing fund for healthcare workers. He created a loan forgiveness program for medical professionals in underserved areas. But he kept driving for Uber twice a week, hoping he'd pick up Sarah again. He needed to know if what he felt that night was real or just a wealthy man's guilt-driven fantasy. 3 months later, Marcus got another pickup request from San Francisco General. Same time, same place. Sarah got in the car, and she looked different. Still tired, but something about her had changed. There was lightness that hadn't been there before. "Hey," she said, recognizing him, the philosophical Uber driver. "How are you?" "I'm good," Marcus said, genuinely smiling. "You look better than last time." "I feel better. You're not going to believe what happened to me." Sarah was practically glowing. "My landlord told me I won some sort of housing lottery. My rent is paid for 2 years. 2 years! And I still think this might be a scam. But I got a letter saying my student loans were paid off by some healthcare fund." Marcus kept his eyes on the road, his heart pounding. "That's incredible." "I cried for like 3 hours," Sarah admitted. "I haven't felt this light in 10 years. I didn't realize how much weight I was carrying until it was gone. I can actually breathe now." "You deserve it," Marcus said quietly. "From what you told me, you give everything to your patients." "Maybe. But here's the thing that's been bothering me." Sarah leaned forward. "I've been trying to research this healthcare workers relief fund, and I can't find anything about it. No website, no charity registration, no news articles. It's like it doesn't exist." Marcus felt his throat go dry. "Maybe it's new." "That's what I thought. But when I called the loan servicer to confirm, the woman on the phone got really weird. She said the payment came from a private individual, not an organization. She wouldn't tell me who." Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "And then," Sarah continued, I started thinking about the timing. This all happened right after that night I met you. The night I told a complete stranger all about my problems. Marcus pulled up to a red light and made the mistake of looking in the rearview mirror. Sarah was staring right at him with an expression he couldn't read. Marcus Lee isn't your real name, is it? She asked softly. His silence was answer enough. I'm her nurse. We learned to read people really well, really fast. That first night, something about you didn't add up. Your hands were too soft for someone doing gig work. Your watch was a cheap knockoff, but you wore it like someone who usually wears expensive watches, and you drove that Camry like it wasn't really yours. Marcus pulled over to the side of the road and turned around to face her. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have deceived you. Who are you really? He took a deep breath. Marcus Chen. I own a tech company, and yes, I paid your rent and your loans. I'm sorry for not being honest about it. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Marcus Chen? The billionaire Marcus Chen? He nodded. To his complete surprise, Sarah started laughing. Not angry laughter, but genuine, disbelieving amusement. A billionaire was driving me home from work. She shook her head. Why? Because I'd lost touch with what matters. My therapist asked me when I'd last had a real conversation, and I couldn't answer. So I did something stupid and went undercover to meet real people. He used air quotes, cringing at how it sounded. That's incredibly privileged and kind of condescending, Sarah said bluntly. I know. It was. It is. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. But Sarah, meeting you changed something fundamental in me. You tipped me $7 when you could barely afford rent because you thought I needed it. You spent 18 hours saving lives and still had compassion left over for a stranger. I couldn't stop thinking about that. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I should be angry at you for lying, for playing at poverty like it's a game you can quit whenever you want. You should be, Marcus agreed, but I'm not. Because whatever your motivation was, you actually did something. Most rich people I've met, they'll tell you how much they care about healthcare workers. Then they'll vote against our unions and complain about their taxes. You actually helped. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Can I give you some advice? Please, don't stop. Not just with me. With all of this, you have resources most people can't even imagine. Use them, but don't do it from a distance. Stay uncomfortable. Keep driving. Keep meeting people. Keep questioning everything. The moment you go back to that comfortable bubble is the moment you stop seeing us as human. She got out of the car but leaned back in through the window. And Marcus? Thank you. You gave me my life back. I'll never forget that. Marcus watched her walk into her building, then sat in the used Camry he still owned, thinking about everything that had changed. The next board meeting, Marcus proposed a radical restructuring of how his company compensated contract workers. He established an affordable housing fund with $100 million initial commitment. He cut his own salary by 60% and redistributed it to worker benefits. Some board members resigned. His stock took a hit. Tech blogs called him a traitor to capitalism. Marcus didn't care. He kept driving for Uber one night a week. He still does, because Sarah was right. The moment he got comfortable again was the moment he'd lose sight of what mattered. And he'd finally found something that mattered more than the next quarter's earnings. The $7 tip that changed everything.